Welcome back to NYSE TV Live. I'm Trinity Chavez. While the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles will take good care of business on Sunday on the field, there's plenty of business taking place off the field as well. For example, companies are paying a pretty penny when it comes to advertisement for just a little bit of screen time. Brands are reportedly spending upwards of $8 million for a 30-second commercial spot during the big game. Meanwhile, the American Gaming Association says that it's anticipating U.S. bettors to legally wager a record $1.39 billion on Sunday's matchup. Joining me now to talk more about the business behind the Super Bowl is Dan Roberts, editor-in-chief at Front Office Sports. Dan, it's great to have you.
Morning.
Now, there's been a lot of major developments when it comes to the NFL and media, but perhaps the biggest has been Tom Brady's first year in the booth for Fox. He'll be on the call this weekend, so how much pressure is on Brady and Fox to deliver?
Well, I think there is pressure on Brady, especially because there's so many critics who said that he hasn't been very good so far. I do think he's improved a great deal over the season. It's a 10-year contract with Fox, not to mention that there's a potential conflict of interest because Tom Brady now owns 5% of the Las Vegas Raiders. So I think a lot of people thought that when that ownership stake went through, they wouldn't let him call Raiders games. That is not the case. The NFL has said it doesn't see a conflict. Brady and others have said they don't see a conflict. But performance aside, that's a major storyline. Yesterday here at our FOS live set, we got a chance to talk to Greg Olson, who, of course, was in that #1 spot on Fox's NFL broadcast team, got bumped down to the #2 team for Tom Brady. And Olson kind of used the opportunity to clear the air a little bit. He said, you know, my own comments have been misconstrued. That's probably my fault. I'm not angry at Fox. I'm not angry at Tom. But I have called one Super Bowl, and my aim is to call more of them, which shouldn't be earth-shattering headline news. So it depends who you ask here, but a lot of people think Greg Olson should be the one in that slot. How much pressure is on Brady to do a good job during this Super Bowl? Some, but I don't think that if he doesn't do a great job and if critics are harsh, it means that Fox won't bring him back. He has a 10-year contract, and it's sort of up to him whether he walks or not. If you want my opinion, if he walks long before that 10-year contract is over, he's going to use his Raiders ownership stake as the excuse. That gives him an out. He can say, I really want to focus on my role with the Raiders.
And we've seen a lot with the NFL, especially when it comes to the NFL gain even more yardage in the streaming space. Now, this year especially with Christmas doubleheader on Netflix and a playoff game exclusively on Prime Video. So is the league's media strategy working when it comes to viewership? I think that there's going to be over 120 million people who are expected to tune in this year.
Yeah, in some ways, it's the most fascinating question about the NFL, right? And yesterday we had the chance to interview two different NFL execs, Hans Schroeder, who heads up media, and Brian Rolap, who does media distribution and scheduling. And both of them address the exclusive streaming games. I've written a lot about the fragmentation headaches that some people feel. In other words, there's a lot of people who they're looking for the game, and when it's exclusive to Netflix or exclusive to Amazon Prime or exclusive to Peacock, they can't find it. And it's kind of head spinning, but if you're the NFL, it's all about reach. And that's what these NFL execs will tell you is we're not trying to give an exclusive game to some streaming app that no one has. You know, Brian Rolap even said, we know you're all on Amazon. We know you all have Netflix. So in other words, they're not going to give it to Apple TV Plus if they don't feel like it has the reach, or Hulu. But certainly you're right that there are more games exclusive to streaming than ever before. And I think it's a sign that the NFL feels like it needs to get that next group of people. You said 120 million people watched the last Super Bowl. Soon they're basically hitting a peak in America, and that's why I think you're also seeing the NFL expand abroad more than ever before. They've announced that there's going to be a game played in Australia next year. More games played outside the U.S. than ever before. So the NFL needs to constantly get bigger, and I think it kind of feels like it is approaching a saturation point in the U.S. So you're only going to see more fragmentation of its media rights.
Now, there's also another part of NFL's recent strategy that's quite interesting, leaning into sports betting, which began doing so right in 2021. How has the leagues continued to embrace sports betting, especially when it comes to partners, and how has this benefited the overall business?
Well, guys, I'm right here on Radio Row at the Super Bowl. We've been here since Monday. I think you have some good depth of field here in the shot. Everywhere you look is DraftKings and FanDuel. No joke. The biggest build-outs, the largest live sets. I'm looking at DraftKings and Ross Tucker and the Golix. I'm looking at FanDuel and the Kay Adams show. I'm looking at DraftKings, FanDuel. And so that is just to say that the league has truly embraced partnerships with these betting companies. And these two companies are sponsoring everything in sports media. Now, I think something has to give there, and it kind of can't last forever. But you're right, it really hit an acceleration point in the last couple of years. Years ago when I was at Fortune magazine, I covered the rise of DraftKings and FanDuel very closely. At first, they were daily fantasy sports companies, DFS. And they said, we're not betting operators. But of course, they saw the writing on the wall. They were very smart. They knew that the federal ban on sports betting, which was PASPA, P-A-S-P-A, would be struck down eventually. And in 2018, it was. But the NFL was still the league that dragged its heels the longest. It really held off from embracing sports betting until it finally did. And once it did embrace it, it really went all in. So legal betting is on the rise. But remember, most of the betting still happens in the dark, so to speak. People who were already bettors long before they legalized it. It's going to continue to be a big story. And we're seeing some issues with the embrace of betting. Look at the scandals we've seen with the NBA and with MLB, the Shohei Ohtani translator, a number of ripple effects.
Dan, and talking about big stories, we have about 60 seconds left here, but I do want to get your take on another big story that you've been covering lately, which is the intersection of the NFL and private equity. What more should our viewers know, and how can it reshape the franchises in the future?
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. In some ways, it doesn't affect the average fan. Most of these new private equity owners in a team, you're never going to see them. They're behind the scenes. It's a way for your team to just get an infusion of extra capital. Now, in some cases, it is more prominent people. But, when the Dolphins announced that a PE firm has taken a 10% stake, or the Bills announced that a PE firm has taken a 10% stake, it's not going to affect the fan. Similar to sports betting, the NFL actually held off the longest. The other leagues, MLB, NBA, they've allowed private equity ownership stakes for years, and actually larger percent stakes. The NFL is capped at 10%. What it means for you, the fan, is your team gets more investment, and your team probably gets a higher valuation. For the private equity guys, it's a way to get in, have a box at an NFL team. And, no investment is ever guaranteed, but owning a piece of an NFL team is pretty close to it. Anyone can probably turn that around in 2 to 4 years and get more money than they bought it for. So it's the NFL opening its arms to more investment.
A lot to look out for. Thank you again, Dan Roberts, editor-in-chief at Front Office Sports.